Okay, so just a few more examples as promised. So here we start out, we realize that again, it's not in standard form. We don't have everything on the left side like we want it. So we need to go ahead and move that. So I'm going to move this over, and x squared negative 10x minus 4x is negative 14x. And then we move this 1 over, and we end up with x squared minus 14x minus 48 is equal to 0. Okay, so once we have that, plus 48, we need to factor this. There's nothing to simplify, rearrange, or GCF to take out, but we do need to factor it. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply to equal 48 and add to equal negative 14. So in this case, let's see, negative 8 times negative 6 would be 48, a positive 48. And if I add negative 8 and negative 6, I get negative 14. So those are going to be my two numbers. So I'm going to factor that into x squared minus 8x minus 6x plus 48. We're going to split that into our two groups. We're going to take out that greatest common factor. Here it's 8x, and we're left with x minus 8. And here it is negative 6. Sorry, forgive my little blunder there. Pull out that negative 6 and we're left with x minus 8 again. So here is our common factor, x minus 8. Here are the leftovers, x minus 6. If I multiply that back out, I get what I started with. So those are the correct factors. And now we just set those factors equal to 0 and solve. Add 8, x is equal to 8. Add 6, x is equal to 6. And remember, we can check these answers. All we have to do is graph them. And when we graph them, we'll be able to see that that should cross the x-axis at 6, 0, and 8, 0 on the x-axis. And so we can check those answers and to make sure that they are correct. And don't forget to write your answer as a solution set. So a couple more examples that we'll do. Just want to make sure you have plenty of options here to look at. So on this one, we're going to go ahead and rearrange everything. So we're going to subtract that x squared and have 10x squared. And then we're going to subtract this 8x. So 10x squared minus 8x. And again, we do have a greatest common factor here that we need to take out. So if I take out 2x, I'm left with 5x, and I'm left with 4. And it's fully factored now. So we're just going to take those two factors and set them equal to 0 and solve. So I divide by 2, x is equal to 0. I add 4, 5x is equal to 4. I divide by 5, x is equal to 4/5. And that's going to be our solution. X is equal to 0 and 4/5. And again, we can check those. Plug them into the calculator. We can check and make sure that they work. Okay. We're also going to do a couple more examples. We will do 3x squared plus 9x minus 12 equals 0. It's already set to equal to 0, so all we need to do is factor now. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply to equal. Remember, it's a times c, so 3 times negative 12 is negative 36, and add to equal 9. So two numbers that multiply to equal negative 36 and add to equal 9. Okay, but one thing that we forgot to do was check to see if anything needed to have a greatest common factor removed, and it does. So actually we have one step that we need to do before we start doing this. So I'm going to cross that out, and I'm going to backtrack. So remember, sometimes we got to go back and double check for things like that. I take out a greatest common factor of 3, and I'm left with x squared plus 3x minus 4. Okay, now I can factor what's left here in this trinomial. So I'm actually looking for two numbers that multiply to equal negative 4 and that add to equal 3. So in that case, I need a positive 4 and a negative 1 will multiply to equal negative 4 and add to equal positive 3. So that's what I'm going to split these two into. So 3 is still a factor over here. X squared plus 4x minus x minus 4. And then we're going to group those, and we need to take out the greatest common factor for each of these. So in this case it's going to be x, we're left with x plus 4, and here it's going to be a -1 and we're left with x plus 4. Here's our common factor, so again 3 is still a factor, x plus 4 is the common factor, and then the leftovers here are x minus 1. Multiply all that back out, it's going to give you what you started with, but we do need to set all of these equal to 0. So we have 3 equals 0, x plus 4 equals 0, and x minus 1 equals 0. So here 3 is not equal to 0, so this is not a solution. Okay, so we are done with that. This one we subtract 4, and x is equal to -4, and we add 1, and so x is equal to 1. So our final answers here are these two. X is equal to -4 and +1. Alright, I've got one more quick example that I want to do with you, and then I think that we're going to be done with these. Okay, so it's already set equal to 0. We need to check to make sure nothing needs to be simplified, rearranged, or greatest common factor removed, and it doesn't look like there's anything there that needs to be done, so we're going to go ahead and factor it. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply to equal 8 times 5, which is 40, and add to equal -22. So I would say we are looking for a -20 and a -2. If I multiply those, I get +40. If I add them, I get -22. So those are the two numbers that I'm going to use. So I'm just going to split this into 2. So 8x squared minus 20x minus 2x plus 5. And then we group them and take out the greatest common factor. So greatest common factor here is going to be, let's see, 4. Yes, let's take out, so sorry about that, I just blanked for a second. We're going to take out a 4x, and that's going to leave us with an x, let's see, 2x minus 5, and then here we're going to take out a -1 and be left with 2x minus 5 again. So our common factor is 2x minus 5, and our leftover is 4x minus 1. And if I multiply those back out, again, we'll just check it real fast. Our first terms, that's going to give me 8x squared. Our outer terms, we have a -2x. Inner terms, we have a -20x. And our last terms, we have a +5. We add all that together, and we have what we started with. So yes, these are the correct factors, and that's what we're going to set equal to 0. So 2x minus 5 is equal to 0. 4x minus 1 is equal to 0, and then we just solve for x. So add 5, divide by 2, x is equal to 5 halves. Add 1, divide by 4, x is equal to 1/4, and our final answer is 1/4 and 5 halves. Okay? So we just keep doing those same processes over and over again to find solutions. We know how to factor, we know how to do that.